Independent content creators. Co-hosted normally by me, Indy. I'm founder and editor of Indie Left News and Indie Media Today. I got Reef Breland sitting next to me.
At Kennedy News.
Is Andrew Rivera on The Handsome Cynic?
It's Politics and Survival.
My name is Jesse Jett.
It's American Tradition.
What's up, Space Monkeys? Welcome to Political Fight Club. I'm Robert Durden.
I mostly make art for INN.
Big Man Crab Joe. Keep up those great videos.
Hey guys, it's Yeti coming at you.
Hello, my name is Lucy from Blue Moon Red Wine.
This is Chris Legion.
Keep fighting that good fight out there, guys. I'll talk to you later.
Who are these people?
All right. Good evening. Good evening. Good evening. Thank you for joining me tonight on episode 3 of Bread and Circuses. I have an interesting show for you tonight. A couple of things that popped up on the news this week. Of course, you know how the 24-hour news cycle goes. And for one of the things that ended up popping up into the news this week, we can kind of do one of these and dust our shoulders off, because what happened was one of the references in the CISA article, that CISA discovery that I talked about last week. Well, there ended up being an injunction filed, and it was one of the pieces that was referenced in the CISA article, the CISA discovery that I talked about last week. So we'll go into that. And then on top of that, I found it really interesting that, like, RFK, say what you will about like his position on Israel and his foreign policy position, the fact that he's just kind of like a really hardcore liberal. And let's just look for a second that he's dropping some really serious red pills on what was it, News Nation at the town hall. So I kind of wanted to go over some of those and fact check some of the stuff that I thought was relevant, and some of the stuff that he got a lot of pushback on, and kind of hear that even on these independent news stations, even the ones that are on the internet, they're still giving him a hard time. They sound like crystal ball. Like this freaking moderator was just kind of really feisty and really kind of argumentative with him. And then we're going to end up the show. I saw kind of see a direction where AI is going, and it's a little bit concerning for me. So, a little bit different than kind of just going over the news and just kind of regurgitating and kind of analyzing what's going on in the daily news cycle. I kind of wanted to give a little bit more of a deeper analysis on kind of the direction I think AI is going, and how I feel like we need to be really more careful and vigilant about how it relates to us as people, us as humans, and stop kind of idolizing it. So I'll save that for the end. But start off with, let's go ahead and talk about this court case, because this court case is fucking huge. It's great news for free speech absolutists in a way. I mean, it's not a guarantee, but it is showing us that even the courts are sick of their shit. So this is from The Guardian. As you know, it's extremely kind of like an establishment publication, but their framing is a little whack, but I wanted you to see that this was in the news yesterday. So limits on Biden officials working with social media firms, a quote unquote weaponization of the court expert. And who's their fucking expert? None other but Nina Jankowicz from the defunct was it Disinformation Governance Board. Lady was all for censorship. She was their expert who came up with this quote. But the crux of it is just to say, in Tuesday's ruling, a federal judge from a U.S. district court in Louisiana imposed tough restrictions on federal agents and officials liaising with social media companies over online content. The injunction, which the Biden administration appealed on Wednesday, comes amid a mounting pressure from Republican leaders and right-wing groups claiming collusion between the Biden administration and social media platforms to censor conservative speech. So let's stop staring at that for a second and kind of go back to this. So you guys remember how I went over this last week, and we were talking about how CISA, they create these nonprofits. The nonprofits are a reporting repository where election officials can make these false reports. They make these misleading reports. We saw that they were reporting on Ted Cruz, which is ridiculous. And that CISA would take these reports and just forward them to social media companies, and social media companies very, very rarely would push back on it and would just censor it, would just shut it off. So the idea that it was like an affront, or it was like it was like protecting democracy or protecting free speech. It was doing quite the opposite. It was just, we saw last week that it was very, very intrusive, very, very deliberate effort by the federal government to create these non-profit organizations to try and get around the First Amendment. Remember how we talked about, we showed the First Amendment ruling that said that the federal government cannot set up nonprofits and third-party entities for the purpose of going around the First Amendment. So we'll see how that pans out. It is just an injunction, but I just wanted to be transparent with you guys. So let's just go through the injunction and see what it has to say. So there's no confusion there and there's no misinterpretation there. So give me 1 second while we pull this up. Give me 1 second here. Where are you? There it is. Okay. So you can see state of Missouri et al. Versus freaking Biden. Okay. And this was regarding election interference. They were saying that they didn't like people's posts during the fucking elections. And so they were like election officials were using CISA to clamp down on election malinformation. Basically, we saw it was like factual information, like that post with Ted Cruz where he said, oh, why is it taking so long in these like Democrat states to get a freaking count? You know, that's so weird. They tried to take that stuff down. So this injunction, it's not enshrined in law, it's not precedent, but what it's saying is that the judge is basically saying that, hey, like there's enough cause here, you guys have brought enough of a case forward that we think it's safe to say that we can put an injunction and make it like kind of enshrine protections for people against this like full-throated surveillance state by the Biden administration while the court is underway, while this judgment is taking place. So of course it can still go the other way. We don't know what's going to happen yet, but the injunction is very positive from what I've seen, from what other people have said. Seeing that there's an injunction against this while the case is proceeding, especially that it's a federal case and it's against the Joe Biden administration, kind of says a lot that this was like a pretty clear-cut case of an infringement on the First Amendment, and this judge isn't fucking around. So I'm going to kind of skip over the first few pages because basically what it is just calling out every single person and department that is under the injunction, okay? So you got the Department of Health and Human Services, National Institute of Allergies and Infectious Diseases. So you know what that's in regards to. Surgeon General, Centers for Disease Control and Prevention. Okay. The United States Census Bureau, Federal Bureau of Investigation. Okay. The Department of Justice. Okay. Fucking White House press secretary. They called her out by name. Karine Jean-Pierre. She is under injunction by this court order. Okay. Who else we got in here? So you can see it's just absolutely ridiculous. They go for the jugular with all these people. Here's CISA, Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency. Okay, so that's what we talked about last week. They're calling him out by name. Brian Scully, who we saw was one of the officials in CISA. The United States Department of Homeland Security, which is the organization that had CISA under it. Okay, the Department of State. Okay, I think. So you can see it just goes through the entire government is on notice for violating the First Amendment. I think that's really significant. You can go through this. It's on freaking New York Times. They have the whole thing here. But it's important to see that they're not fucking around and they're calling out every single department by name. They even called out Karine Jean-Pierre saying that you guys need to stop what you're doing right now. Okay? So let's go over some of the terms of the injunction. Okay, and again, if you saw what I was reading with the CISA documents, a lot of this stuff is going to be kind of familiar to you. Meeting with social media companies for the purpose of urging, encouraging, pressuring, or inducing in any manner the removal, deletion, suppression, or reduction of content containing protected free speech on social media platforms. Guys, that's what we were talking about. Remember the reporting platform that the election officials were using to make reports complaining about officials that would then be forwarded to CISA, that CISA would then report to social media companies. That's what they're talking about right there. Specifically flagging content on posts or social media platforms and forwarding such to social media companies, urging, encouraging, pressuring, or inducing in any manner for removal, deletion, suppression, or reduction of content containing protected free speech. So what's important to notice here is that the judge is recognizing that there's a power imbalance between the federal government and these private organizations. So even though like, you could look at the fact that they enshrined into the First Amendment that they can't go on and make third parties to go around this, is because the founding fathers could have foreseen that there's a power imbalance between the federal government being like, hey, could you please, if you don't mind, take down this post, or don't, it's up to you. There's obviously a power imbalance there. There's obviously something where they're like going to be inclined to do that anyway, without question, because they want favors from the government, they want to be cooperative with the government, etc. There could be a million different reasons, but at the end of the day, that there is this vested interest to just do what the government says. So it ends up becoming a situation where the government ends up being the de facto arbiter of truth. Okay, and that's what the judge is calling them out on. It's great news. So third, urging, encouraging, pressuring, or inducing in any manner social media companies to change their guidelines for removing, deleting, suppressing, or reducing content containing protected free speech. So this is great too. So this is kind of the judge admitting, going around the like, oh, they're a private company, they can do whatever they want. If Facebook went around tomorrow and started creating some crazy policy regarding free speech, and certain topics became taboo in relation to what's going on here, or even that there was enough of a coincidence, if you could call it that. I'm not really a big fan of believing in coincidences, that a corporate policy took place as a result of this injunction. The judge is putting the kibosh on that. So he's even going a step further and saying, hey, I know you guys are going to be shady and you're still going to do the will of the federal government. I'm going to make sure that you guys aren't trying to change the rules while this case is underway. Awesome, judge. Next, emailing, calling, sending letters, texting, or engaging in any communication of any kind with social media companies, urging, encouraging, pressuring, or inducing in any manner for removal, deletion, suppression, or reduction of content containing protected free speech. I think this is going straight out to the Fed right here. This is saying, shut the fuck up, stop being freaking psyops, stop freaking interfering in people's right to free speech. This is straight up Fed shit. This is straight up, sounds like straight up fucking, them working, chilling out on fucking internet all day. They're fucking bot farms. They're fucking reaching out to their assets and freaking social media. So next point, collaborating, coordinating, partnering, switchboarding, and or jointly working with the Election Integrity Partnership, the Virality Project, the Stanford Internet Observatory, or any project for the purpose of urging, encouraging, pressuring, or inducing in any manner removal, deletion, suppression, or reduction of content posted with social media companies containing protected free speech. So this is de facto telling them that CISA can no longer function in the state of Louisiana, because you remember that the Election Integrity Partnership worked as a part of CISA. That was part of the organization that helped do the reporting. So they're also just making sure that there's a separation of powers here, which is really important. Threatening, pressuring, or coercing social media companies in any manner to remove, delete, suppress, or reduce posted content or postings containing protected free speech. So again, that kind of goes back to what I was saying, where beyond them just forwarding the reporting platform to FBI giving you a text and being like, why haven't you taken down this post yet? Or kind of like what I talked about, where they talked about last week, where they thought about even doing like a rapid response team where people would show up at your fucking door and not liking what you were saying. So they were like, hey, why did you make this post on Facebook? Why did you make this post on Twitter? And people showing up with guns and a badge and a fucking outfit at your front door. They're discouraging that. Taking any action such as urging, encouraging, pressuring, or inducing in any manner social media companies to remove, delete, suppress, or reduce posted content protected by the free speech clause of the First Amendment of the United States Constitution. So I think that's just further kind of enshrining the First Amendment. It kind of goes back to the same thing, the coercion. Following up with social media companies to determine whether the social media companies remove, deleted, suppress, or reduce previous social media postings containing protected speech. So that means during election season, when it goes to the reporting platform and it doesn't get taken down, the freaking handler assigned to that freaking MSAC or whatever it is can go and email the fucking guy who's supposed to take it down and be like, hey, I see that post is still there. Why haven't you taken down that post yet? Hey, you haven't taken down that post. That post is misinformation. Why haven't you taken down that post yet? So again, the judge is like freaking watching out. This is fucking awesome. Requesting content reports from social media companies detailing actions taken to remove, delete, suppress, or reduce content containing protected free speech. So this is crazy. So this is basically saying that like social media doesn't really have a reason to put out reports illustrating how they are doing the bidding of CISA and others to censor Americans. Okay? So this is more than just going to the Biden administration. This is also going to the fucking social media companies and being like, you have no reason to do this anymore. There's an injunction, like, don't do it. So notifying social media companies to BOLO, be on the lookout for postings containing protected free speech. This preliminary injunction said named defendants, their agents, officers, employees, contractors, and all acting in concert with the aforementioned conduct. This preliminary injunction also precludes said named defendants, their agents, officers, employees, and contractors from further in concert with others who are engaged in said conduct. So there's also a couple little stipulations that basically kind of just narrowed in scope a little bit. I'm not going to go into it as much. Stuff that they were already doing, stuff like informing social media companies of posting involving criminal activity or criminal conspiracies. So we still want to know if there's people who are trying to solicit, CP and drugs and criminal and soliciting like freaking hitman or something like that. It's that kind of stuff, stuff that isn't about election interference, isn't about people asking questions. It's about like protecting people, protecting children, protecting women, like that kind of order society that doesn't infringe on free speech, kind of like you can't yell fire in a crowded movie theater sort of thing. So anyway, you saw it for yourself, guys. I'll even post that on social media later because it's quick. There's no partisanship there. That's what it is. That's a judge from Louisiana doing his fucking job, and it's freaking awesome. As you guys saw, like it was pretty awesome. He's really going for the jugular with it. He really understands the scope of what these organizations like CISA can do and how those social media companies, because of the power imbalance, so readily just do whatever and don't even scrutinize the information or really malinformation by their own language to screen the censorship material that has come in their way. They don't even, so it's good. It's like Louisiana of all places, like you wouldn't think that they would be on top of this, but like the judge is not fucking around. Okay. That's my interpretation, that it's a great fucking injunction. Okay. So shifting gears a little bit, let me see if there's anything else I kind of wanted to mention with that. Again, if you haven't seen my report on CISA, I personally kind of think it's a little dry. That's just me being like a little personal about it. But it does, like, I literally go through the document with you guys. I do outline this stuff. And if you saw the CISA document last week, I'm like, yep, I called that shit. 2 days later, this came out. And this is like one of the references for that report. So if you want to know more about how it's so obvious, like doing that article and doing that deep dive with the CISA report last week, and then seeing this and seeing how the mainstream articles are trying to frame it as like a could be, should be, like, oh, it's an affront sort of thing. I have the like experience, the knowledge, and you guys too, if you saw it last week, to see that obviously this is like rock solid, that this is going to be a fucking like slam dunk, and hopefully some precedent gets set about protecting our free speech on social media. Okay, so really, really, really important case. It could be months, years before there's any resolution. But the injunction did go pretty deep. I think, like, I'm not a fucking judge, but like I fucking genuinely talk shit about those geriatrics holding those positions. So the fact that he had the foresight and knowledge to understand the scope and the power imbalance between these organizations, and how these nonprofits were basically acting as intermediaries of CISA, speaks volumes that the judge was well informed about the decision. So with that, let's shift gears a little bit. I'm going to bring up the RFK town hall. Now, to start off with, if you guys have seen me on Politically Homeless and on my previous shows, like I really like to be as nuanced as possible with RFK, okay? Because I understand that RFK has like a really, really, really bad position on Israel, okay? Like the worst position. I think he has a terrible position on Israel. I think his imperialist position, even when it comes to China, is kind of cringy. Okay, I need us as my audience, as my listeners, to recognize that there are things that RFK can still say that shouldn't be said on establishment media, that are like kind of like the like truths you're not supposed to tell people that he tells. And there's some that I even pull up like further information on to be like, listen, he was like backing this stuff up. So we're not for Snow Himbo. So really, I'm glad you mentioned that before I posted the video. So I'm going to be careful to avoid specifying on COVID. Okay. You guys can fill in the blanks how you want to fill in the blanks, but you guys know how YouTube is. So I think he said a lot of fucking base shit, and I will post the video and go through some of the questions and some of the bad framing. But I just really want you guys to wrap your heads around that he can have a really shitty take on Israel. He can have a really shitty take on foreign policy and still be alerting the masses, especially Democrats, like they're brainwashed with the freaking shit, the institutional like big pharma shit. So the fact that he can go on establishment media, even if it's internet media, and go on and be like, hey, there's still these truths about our institutions that you need to know about, regardless of whether you think he should be president or not, regardless of whether you think he'd be a good politician. These truths need to be said to the masses, and that's what I want to show us. Okay, so let's just remember that shitty president, I agree. Truths you're not supposed to tell the audience, I also agree. So let's do that. So that being said, I'm gonna pull up the town hall. Give me 1 second here. And thank you, Angel and Desert Mantis. I do think like we can talk about policies. I think his policies in regards to regulation, and this is difficult for me to say because I'm kind of like generally against government, are appropriate given as how far-reaching and how corporatist our structure is at this point. But I think there's a more existential threat with stuff like Israel and world wars, where I don't think that he's the right guy at this time, even though he's telling us truths that we need to hear. So with that being said, let me pull this up. All right, so give me 1 second here. Pull this over. All right. So first thing, one thing to take in mind with this this moderator slash journalist slash establishment shill is that just about every single question she has is really, really bad framing. Okay. So us as being educated individuals, when it comes to stuff like Ukraine and it comes to stuff to big pharma, kind of understanding like big picture stuff better than everybody else, we can look at it and recognize that as bad framing. But like, I don't want that. I don't want us to immediately dismiss the content of this because the journalist doing the job of asking these questions is acting in bad faith. I still think there's a lot of good information. So let's kind of get into this. So 7:22. Give me 1 second here.
There seems to be an almost frantic need to describe,
which is about Russia. Tiani?
Yes, thank you, Elizabeth. I have heard and read that you believe that Russia has acted in good faith towards trying to resolve the war in Ukraine. And I'm wondering if that is actually your position, and how would you bring peace to the region without emboldening Putin and threatening democratic self-government around the world?
Well, that is a bit of a misstatement of what I said. What I said was that in April of 2022, the war began on February 24th, 2022. In April, there was a peace outreach by Putin and Zelensky. And they actually signed a peace agreement and at that time. And Boris Johnson was dispatched by the White House to sabotage that agreement.
Okay, I just want to pause it for a second and say that you're not supposed to say that. And we all know you're not supposed to say that. To the fact that he like even called out Boris Johnson. He didn't even say the thing where it was like the negotiation was already made. There was like they were ready to sign it. The ink was ready. Like he went straight for the jugular with that. And I think that's extremely significant.
Russians were acting in good faith after signing that agreement. They were actually withdrawing troops from the area around Kiev.
Like, don't forget, most people don't know this. So even though it's News Nation, it's like kind of a town hall. And like, I kind of feel like the people who are asking the questions, a couple of them feel like plants. So how authentic that audience is kind of a question in of itself. But again, it's just important truths that people on MSNBC, CNBC, they're not hearing this shit. Fox News, maybe not.
So it was clear that they were operating in good faith at that point, and we were not operating in good faith. We should be trying to settle this war through diplomacy.
And again, I want to add that this is a far departure from his presidential announcement speech when he said we were in Ukraine for no reason. So I just, for a noble reason, I just want to give credit where credit's due again, that he seemed to have walked back that position pretty good.
Since then, there have been 350,000 Ukrainian kids that have been killed, and we have turned that nation into a proxy war between a proxy war between Russia and the United States. And by the way, we were told this was a humanitarian exercise.
Okay, so he does.
If it was humanitarian, it means reducing bloodshed and shortening the conflict. But when President Biden was asked, why are we over there? He said, for regime change of Vladimir Putin. In April of 2021.
So yeah, that's a complete, I won't say 180, but maybe a 90-degree turn from his presidential speech where he pretended that we had a good reason at first to completely recognizing the cynical nature of the military-industrial complex and understanding that it was a war of attrition and it was about weakening Russia. It had nothing to do with trying to help Ukrainians. Now, I don't think he goes into the whole, Azov battalion stuff, especially with like his son being in special forces, but I think that's good for that moment. Let's see. We'll skip that one. Oh yeah, this is good. So this is also terrible framing. But he handles it like a champion.
His defense secretary, Lloyd Austin, said that the reason actually kill him if he's not in the accord.
But if you negotiate with Putin right now and get him to stop his invasion, I mean, I know you said you're not defending Putin, but he's an accused war criminal. He poisons his enemies and imprisons his enemies. He's an autocrat. So if you
I don't know how this fucking lady sleeps at night, but anyway.
Award him part of Ukraine, what message are you sending to dictators and autocrats around the world?
How do you say that with a straight face with Biden being our fucking president and Zelensky literally just admitting to his people that he will not hold elections next year while there's a war still ongoing? Just unbelievable.
Looking to neighboring countries thinking, hey, I want some of that.
When my uncle was president and his military apparatus wanted him to go to war with Vietnam, with Laos, with Cuba, with the Soviet Union during the Berlin crisis in 1982. He said, you have to put yourself into the shoes of your adversary. If we're going to have peace, you have to be able to put yourself in the shoes of the adversary and see the world from their perspective and recognize their legitimate security concerns. Now, we have, through a series of provocations, including unilaterally walking away from the two medium-range nuclear missile treaties with Russia, which we all signed, and President Trump and President Obama walked away from those. We were
not supposed to say those truths. Not supposed to say that stuff.
We promised in 1992 that we would, after the Russians made a huge concession to us of leaving 400,000 troops out of Germany, allowing us to consolidate East and West Germany under NATO control, which was an adversary army to them. And they said, the one thing we want from you is that you will not move NATO 1 inch to the east. And Secretary of State Baker said at that time, famously, we will not move NATO 1 inch to the east. Since then, we have moved it 1,000 miles to the east and 14 countries, and we put Aegis missile systems.
All right, so we all know that talking point, and to that, like, to recognizing that that NATO never moved East Germany, that's obviously like a huge talking point for us at this point. It's still really important to know because like liberal Banes don't think like that. Okay, they don't understand that there was actually rules, and like everybody else was following the rules. Russia made all these concessions for freaking decades. So I wish I knew how many people got to look at this audience, but like I want more people to get in on it because there's a lot of good stuff here. So let us see what else. Oh, this is good. So he gets asked about inflation. It is kind of a lengthy. Well, let's see. It's kind of a lengthy answer, but he does have a lot of nuance with it, and it's important to recognize because he goes beyond. Well, it's just he doesn't say the like establishment talking point where like, oh, we're paying people too much money. He goes and says some truths that people get killed over. So I really want to play that in. So give me 1 second here.
In Romania and Poland, right near Russia's border, when Russia put nuclear missiles.
Economic with votes of all stripes across the country, and that leads to our next question from George, a home builder and contractor in the Chicago area. Hi, George.
Hello. Everywhere I look, prices are sky high, from gasoline to groceries to building materials. Inflation and the uncertainty which it brings with it is damaging our economy. What is your plan to reduce inflation?
Yep. Thank you, George. I have a long-term plan and a short-term plan, but the current plan, which is to raise interest rates, dramatically,
it sucks,
and to end the quantitative easing.
So okay, he obviously doesn't know what he's talking about, and is saying whatever his freaking economist advisor is telling him. There's a good answer that comes later, but basically, like raising inflation has to happen. Or raising the interest rates has to happen. Okay, it has to. It's the only way to kind of bring spending under control. But the problem with doing that is that once you raise the interest rates, the only organizations that can buy property are the ones that can pay in cash. And the only ones that can do that are the ones that have billions and billions and billions and billions and billions of dollars. Okay, so you're creating a situation where you're actually kind of enabling the rentier society, where you have a nation of renters and people who don't own shit. So it's like a really slippery slope. We're pretty fucked when it comes to the dollar for a million different reasons. I don't see how any other ways. And like I watch other stuff. I watch like what's his name on Ben Norton. I can't think of his name right now, but like there's not like they have to raise interest rates. Everybody says they have to raise interest rates, so it's going to happen. Getting rid of quantitative easing. If you don't know what quantitative easing is basically like the government basically buys up shares from the stock market just by like writing out, putting in numbers into a machine and buying up shares. And that's like quantitative easing. It's like basically keeping up the stock market afloat artificially by feeding it tens of billions of dollars all the time. Okay. So obviously that's creating unnecessary spending because we all know that money that gets invested into capital doesn't turn into goods and services really. It just gets funneled into the top. Okay. So the money that gets, we're getting way off topic here, but the money that gets invested into for quantitative easing does not go towards labor. It doesn't go towards industrialization. It doesn't go towards creating anything. It just goes towards this fictitious capital, which doesn't create anything. Okay, so it's bad for a number of reasons. Quantitative easing is bad. Okay, the original intention is to bail out basically these industries that should have fallen like 10 years ago. Okay, so getting rid of it, yes, that's good because like if you want to get away from kind of monopoly capitalism, you want to get away from quantitative easing, and you don't want to bail out businesses that don't deserve to be bailed out. And unfortunately, raising the interest rate is something that has to happen because I mean, everything that I see, I don't see another way of getting out of it. But it's going to create a situation where people are the interest rates go so high where the only people who are buying shit are people who are buying shit in cash, and that's obviously not people, that's corporations. But he does get to the crux of it in about a few minutes here.
I think is really doing tremendous damage. I was in Cleveland yesterday meeting with African American business people in a community called the Lee Harvard community, and telling one of them was a woman who had operated for 4 generations, 80 years, a sausage company that was very, very successful. She just had to, and it was bringing lots of prosperity to her community and lots of jobs. She just had to close it down because she couldn't get a bank loan. She couldn't get a bank loan because the interest rates are high, and the little banks, the ones that will loan to small, and there's no money available to people who need it. And so, what we've done, we've sandbagged Americans. You're right. And why do we have inflation? We have inflation because of the continuous wars.
Boom. That's what I want you guys to hear. Okay. We have inflation because we have continuous wars. That's the kind of stuff that gets you shot. Okay. So let's keep playing a little bit.
Wait, what specifically would you do to lower inflation?
Well, number one, I'm gonna wind down the American empire and start. We've spent
Dude. Like, I'm sorry, Cornel West doesn't say shit like that. Okay, like, I know his takes on fucking Israel and stuff are bad, but like saying stuff like that gets you fucking shot. That gets you freaking suicided. So even though his fake economist response about raising inflation, getting rid of quantitative easing is like bullshit and just nonsense. Getting to the crux of the matter and understanding that we waste trillions and trillions and trillions and trillions and trillions of dollars on the military industrial complex is really attacking the crux of the situation. We obviously understand, I think I read the other day that, okay, just to service our loans, okay, just to service our loans, because we're like 20 something trillion in debt now. Not that debt means anything, but just to service our loans is $500 billion, is like 600 billion a year. Okay. That's just paying interest on America's loans. Okay. So you can't tell me that it just doesn't make sense to me how you can at the end of the day say that capitalism is a good society when literally the government is paying over $500 billion in debt every single year without contributing anything. That's like over $500 million that doesn't go towards roads, it doesn't go towards hospitals, it doesn't go towards schools, it doesn't go towards education. It goes into the pockets of freaking capitalists who then go and buy their third or fourth home or buy their Lambo or buy their yacht. It doesn't get invested into the economy. It just disappears. It's not like real money. It doesn't create anything. So you can't, there's no good argument for that. You're basically having banks just completely robbing us. Imagine, nobody can even imagine $500-600 billion a year. You can't even imagine what that looks like. The amount of shit that we could have done if you're just no, we don't do usury anymore. That used to be a crime. Jesus would he would fucking murder some bankers if he was around today. Anyway, I just think that number is fucking crazy. So, let's see what else. Let's skip that one. Oh, his stance on drug use is actually kind of crazy. So
$1 trillion on the Iraq War and the wars that followed, and we spent $16 trillion on the pandemic. On the lockdown. The lockdown cost us $16 trillion, and we got nothing for it.
Cost more than that, but
American children can go and find themselves again and come back, become contributing members to our society, and stop.
Hold on, let's back up just a little bit.
I'm going to build these rehabs to our society and stop the mayhem and the carnage.
So is it going to be something like long-term recovery being there? And
well, San Padrignano is
it going to be federally finance? Yeah, who's paying
He wants
for
to provide care
Like I
to.
said, I'm going to decriminalize marijuana on a federal basis, allow the states to regulate it, continue to tax it federally, and use those taxes to fund the recovery programs. And I would do the same thing for psychedelic drugs, which I do not think should be criminalized. And,
Bro, he just solicited that information. Nobody asked him about psychedelic drugs. He just went there. Like, oh yeah, we should all just have access to, fucking mushrooms.
Legalize psychedelic drugs?
I would legalize psychedelic drugs. Some form of legalization, but they should, there's so much I know personally, and I know, I've read the studies, and there's so many people being helped in different ways by them, and we have to make it easier, maybe to prescribe them, to give them through therapeutically. I don't know about just buying them in stores. I have to look at all that, but in one way or another, we need to make it easy for people to use them in ways that could benefit our children, that could benefit everybody. So I've seen it in my own family, the benefits of it, and I've been in recovery for 40 years. I'm a person who would never tell you that the answer is a drug. Right? I'm a person who says, you never can fix what's wrong inside of you with something outside of you, with a substance, a powder, a potion, or a pill. It doesn't work. But I have seen, against everything that against all of my, training and indoctrination in that area, I've seen miraculous recoveries from psychedelic drugs, from PTSD, from veterans who have used it, from people who have suffered severe depression, OCD, many other injuries. And
you can't say stuff like that and expect to take on big pharma. Like, that's like the fact that she's allowing him to go on like a 2-minute rant about how we should medicalize and legalize psychedelics like mushrooms and ostensibly, fucking acid, if you wanted to go there, is fucking huge. This is shooting, taking a direct aim at Pfizer. Obviously he already said the stuff, direct aim at big pharma anyway. He already said the stuff about being about using other products, external products, to fix an internal issue. Like, you can't just say that, especially living in a country where everything is medicalized. You can't just, like, in Western world, we believe that everything is solved with a pill. So he's really speaking something that's going to come across to a lot of people as completely crazy. But like, he's on some other shit right here, and I think we should recognize that. So we're gonna skip. I think we'll skip that because I need to be careful with YouTube, but I'll go to 49 because I did want to show some docs on this.
But
you can
I'm
see,
not saying blanket legalization, but we need to make it easy for psychiatrists and therapists who are trained to be able to
he's really advocating for
that's crazy. Syrian, Lynn Redwood, and a number of other people, and we said to him, "Can you show us one test from any vaccine? Pre-licensing safety test." And he said,
"All right, so this is
placebo." From Dr. Fauci and many other people for many years said this. And Bobby Kennedy, when he says that, is wrong. So I met with Dr. Fauci in 2016, and I agreed to go on Trump's Vaccine Safety Commission, and I was with Aaron Siri and Lynn Redwood and a number of other people, and we said to him, "Can you show us one test from any vaccine, pre-licensing safety test?" And he said, "I'll send it to you. I can't find one now." He never did, so we sued him. We sued Aaron Siri and I sued HHS, and after a year of litigation and stonewalling, they said that they could not provide a single safety study for any vaccine that is on the childhood schedule, pre-licensing safety study. So anybody who wants to read that can go to the Children's Health Defense website, and you can read HHS's admission that not a single one has ever been safety tested pre-licensing.
All right, cool. I'll be happy to go on your website and look that up. So I actually do want to show you guys. Check that out really quick. So this actually is crazy. So there's actually a couple things here, because as you can imagine, like, so I don't really know this much about the history of RFK, but what I'm beginning to understand is that he basically, like, he's a lawyer. He freaking, like, sues the shit out of these enormous companies. Like, that's what he does. He sues the shit out of these enormous big pharma companies all the time. That's what he does. So when people call him a loon, say he doesn't know shit, like, maybe he's not a doctor, but, like, it's his job to be fucking informed on this shit. So people should fucking listen. Anyway, I wanted this particular thing, like, it was one of the first things everybody fact checked, and I kind of wanted to show everybody that, like, there is no placebo testing for vaccines. So give me 1 second here. So there's that. All right, so we'll pull this up first. So Department of Health and Human Services. So Informed Consent Action Network. Okay, so this is the organization. This is the law firm that RFK Jr. is a part of. Acting Secretary Hargan asked me to think blah blah blah. We have a far-reaching mission to enhance and protect the health of all Americans. But you can see, okay, Department of Health and Human Services letterhead, okay, fucking official, January 18, 2018, okay, Melinda Warden, acting director of the National Vaccine Program Officer. Like, this is the document, okay? So this is let's read the relevance here. I didn't read the whole thing. I went for the jugular. I wanted to see exactly what he was saying about. Remember, he asked if there's any placebo testing for vaccines prior to them being available for mass consumption. Okay, so his question: please explain how Health and Human Services justifies licensing any pediatric vaccine without first conducting a long-term clinical trial in which the rate of adverse reactions is compared between the subject group and the control group receiving an inner placebo. Reasonable question, that we should be running a control group, and running an experiment before making everybody the experiment. It's a good question. So here's the answer. First fucking line. Inert placebo controls are not required to understand the safety profile of a new vaccine and thus are not required. Okay, so I'm gonna read that again. Okay. So wait, you guys don't conduct any long-term studies to rate of adverse reactions with a control group receiving an inert placebo? Inert placebo controls are not required to understand the safety profile of a new vaccine and are thus not required. Now, sure, maybe somebody can argue and somebody wants to say that, like, actually make an argument that a control group is not required. Okay, I don't remember learning science and learning that a control group was never required to run experiments. And if there was no control group, well, then we're the experiment. Okay, so just to go on, it gets even worse. In some cases, inclusion of placebo control groups is considered unethical. Okay, so this is the argument that, assuming that all vaccines are good, you're a good little American, you assume that everything you're putting in your body is good, then giving somebody a placebo is actually considered bad. Okay, that's the argument they're making, that they can't run a control group because they've convinced themselves that the experiment group is good and therefore we shouldn't have a control group. Even in the absence of a placebo, control groups can be useful in evaluating whether an incidence of specific observed adverse event exceeds that which would be expected without administration of the new jab. Serious adverse events are always carefully evaluated by the FDA, blah, 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 blah. In cases where an active control group is used, an adverse event profile of that control group is usually known, and the findings of the study reviewed in that context are knowledge. But there isn't any. We saw that. So I just wanted to show you guys that you actually can literally look that shit up. There's actually one more here I'll show really quick. Let me see. This one, he asked the FDA about pregnancy. Let me see if I can. Okay. Here's another one. Okay, so he sued the he sued New York the US FDA, okay? He was in the Southern District of New York, okay? The same place that just wants to put Trump's head on a pike, okay? And he requested from Freedom of Information Act, okay, a copy of the report for each clinical trial relied upon by the FDA when approving for use by pregnant women any flu shot currently approved by the FDA. Whereas, after Informed Consent Action Network appealed, the FDA responded in relevant part as follows. These requests sought the clinical trials. Remember, this is a FOIA request. Anybody can file a FOIA request, Freedom of Information Act. These requests sought the clinical trials relied upon by the FDA prior to approving any currently licensed influenza or Tdap vaccine for use in pregnant women as an indicated use. We have no records of records responsive to your requests. We have no records responsive to your requests. None. Okay? They've never tested the flu shot on pregnant women. They've never run control groups on pregnant women for the flu shot that they administer every fucking year. Okay? So, like, he can put his money where his mouth is. Like, he fucking did this shit. So, if people want to call him a loon, fine. But, like, that's fucking FDA. That's, like, Department of Human Services, Health and Human Services. Like, that's them saying, like, we don't have this stuff. We didn't do this stuff. So, he's catching them red-handed. Like, now you can argue, like, yeah, it was dismissal, because probably when you're going against the freaking FDA or the Department of Health and Human Services, they can say, hey, we can litigate this until you're 800 years old. You don't stand a chance. So you just dismiss it with, throwing them a bone, so that the case gets dropped, because even RFK, he does not have the same resources as the Food and Drug Administration, So that's why there's a dismissal. That's why there's no precedent. But you can see from if there's one thing to take away, and this is something that I feel about RFK, regardless of whether the views I disagree with him on, is that I think he's speaking honestly. I think that he is speaking I think there's some stuff that he doesn't know about, like economy and inflation and shit like that. But I think that he's speaking honestly with the stuff that he's saying. So let's see what else we got here. Let's see. Oh, that's a good one. Okay. So a couple other truths that are not supposed to be said here. I just want to get through these, and then we'll shift gears a little bit. Okay, so let me see. Give me 1 second here. Where'd you go? Oh, there it is. Okay. So go to 50 minutes. All right, so this one's about chicken pox.
Licensing now. What I've said is
I'll just let it play.
Other medicines are required to do that. And we should have to do that for vaccines. If I'm wrong, show me the test, show me the study. You won't be able to, because there are none. That means that we don't know what the long-term risks are, the risk profile of those products. And I'll give you mentioned chickenpox. So when CDC was thinking of recommending this chickenpox vaccine as mandating for children, they did a study, and the scientist they hired to do that study was a scientist called Gary Goldman, a contract scientist. And he did the study in an isolated place in California called Antelope Valley, a long-term study. And what they find is if you give the chickenpox vaccine, mass vaccinate with chickenpox, it stops chickenpox, but it causes shingles epidemics later on, which are 20 times as deadly as chickenpox. So nevertheless, despite those studies, we mandated for American children in this country. In Europe, they don't. If you go to the British National Health Service website right now, you can read on that where they say, we do not recommend chickenpox vaccines because it causes shingles epidemics later on. And that's the problem. You can't just look at, you can say that this product is going to prevent this particular disease, but you have to look at the long-term impacts. Vaccines, like other medicines, have injuries that have long diagnostic horizons and long incubation periods, that if you do not do long-term studies on placebo-controlled studies, comparing vaccinated populations to unvaccinated populations. You won't do it. Let me just give you one quick
This
other
one's
example.
actually crazy too.
The most popular vaccine in the world is the DTP vaccine, diphtheria, tetanus, and pertussis. We banned it. We got rid of it in this country because it was causing injuries, brain injuries, severe brain injuries, or death to 1 in every 300 children. We used it in the 80s, and that's why there was all this litigation against vaccine companies that precipitated the passage of the Vaccine Act that then gave them immunity from liability. But in Europe, they don't use it. In America, they don't use it. But we give it to 161 million African children a year. So Bill Gates asked the Danish government to support that program and said it saved 30 million lives. The Danish government said, show us the data. He wasn't able to. So they went to Africa and did their own studies. And they looked at 30 years of DTP data. And what they found shocked them all. They found that girls who got the DTP were dying at 10 times the rate of unvaccinated girls. But they were dying of things that nobody had ever associated with the vaccine. They were dying of diphtheria, of anemia, malaria, bilharzia, pulmonary disease, respiratory disease, and pneumonia. And nobody noticed for 30 years that it was the vaccinated girls and not the unvaccinated girls who were dying.
So that's, again, just a couple rare truths there I just wanted to show. So yeah, I'm avoiding everything with COVID and the pandemic, but this is just stuff that you can go through and see that this was stuff that was done decades ago, and it's still done today. And of course, like, I'm get a hard on when he fucking wants to like go off on Bill Gates. So if he wants to talk shit about Bill Gates, you know, you want to go down that rabbit hole, go look up Depo-Provera. You know, he's been waging eugenics wars against the African people for fucking decades. Man is freaking terrible human being. So couple of things here. You know, he does go into how much money Big Pharma has paid out in the last decade.
And what happened is these girls were not dying of diphtheria, tetanus, and get these, you know, other products. And the the 4 companies that make vaccines in this country, Merck, Sanofi, Glaxo, and Pfizer, have paid over $35 billion in criminal penalties over the past decade for lying to doctors, for falsifying science, for defrauding regulators. And we need to keep an eye on them. We can't just trust them. If they say it's a vaccine, you know, we all trust it. We need to have actual science on it. And I think that's all I say. I don't want to get rid of vaccines. If you want to take a vaccine, you should be able to do it. We need good science, and that's all I've asked for.
But so,
she's completely shocked.
What
completely
do you say
shocked.
to people? I mean,
you can tell that lady just has never. Her brain is like melting right now. She just cannot believe what's coming out of his mouth right now. Like that's the normal liberal reaction to RFK talking for 10 minutes.
It sounds like you're saying that every scientist, every government, our government, governments around the world, doctors like Dr. Butts are all lying about vaccines.
I've never said anything like that.
And of course, the liberals with absolutely zero nuance.
The AMA, the American Academy of Pediatrics, they all, and the FDA says, and in fact, on its website, you can clearly see vaccines they go through 3 stages of FDA testing against double-blind placebos. They already do that testing for vaccines.
Elizabeth, you can say that. I'm telling you.
I'm not saying that. The FDA
no, the FDA is not saying that.
Yes,
because,
they do.
All right, so we're going to skip through that stuff for obvious reasons.
Hello, sir. Thank you so much for being here. As an undecided Democratic voter, I have a few concerns, and I'd like just to hear your thoughts on easing some of those concerns. We just heard about vaccines, that being one of them. Another one being that you have attributed a connection between 5G data and, in quotes, that it was designed, or that it will harvest our data and control our behavior, end quote. And that also.
Can I answer that?
Yes, sir.
Okay, my concern about 5G.
So, okay, just to kind of put my 2 cents out there, like, I haven't really explored the whole 5G radio frequency 4G thing. So, like, I think this is like the reason why I'm playing this particular thing is because I think this is like Alex Jones territory of like red pilling people. And like, so the fact that he's even able to have like a cogent and backed up response to it, I think is amazing. And I mean, I'm kind of interested to kind of do some more digging now. There's some other journalists that I follow who are definitely enrolled in like avoiding 5G and like, you know, not using wireless shit. And like there's definitely plenty of people who I follow on Twitter and stuff who support that kind of idea, the counter narrative that like 5G is fucking terrible for you. And look at RFK. RFK is going to back that shit up.
Is that the RF radiation from 5G is dangerous. It penetrates it disrupts the blood-brain barrier. It also is associated with glioblastomas and other cancers. And it causes a lot of other dramatic health effects. And there are literally thousands and thousands of studies in that. I've litigated on that issue and I've won in the Federal Court of Appeals. So, you know, you can say it's a conspiracy theory.
Okay, so.
But the Federal Court of Appeals, you know, I also won a case on Monsanto and glyphosate that it caused non-Hodgkin's lymphoma, and that was called a conspiracy theory. What I've said about 5G is, yeah, it is dangerous. It is underregulated. Other countries regulate it much better than us. And we need to protect our children. We should not be having these antennas on elementary schools. We should be warning people appropriately. Do not put that cell phone next to your head. Because, you know, we're seeing this epidemic now of glioblastomas, and almost all of them are connected to the year that you favor the cell phone with. Oh, you know, there's study after study that shows that, and I'm in litigation on that issue right now. And, you know, if we get a fair trial, we're going to win that litigation as well.
But again, you're a lawyer and an activist. You're not a doctor or a scientist.
Listen, we live
Trust the experts.
in a democracy. We don't have a priesthood here. We don't have high priests who are telling us we're in charge of our own lives, and Americans need to do their own research. And, you know, listen, people say trust the experts. That became a mantra during COVID. I brought over 500 cases, and almost all of them involved a scientific controversy. My job is to read science, to learn it, and to be able to read it critically. And every case I've ever brought, there's an expert on that side and an expert on this side. When we brought the Monsanto case, there were 3 experts from Harvard, Stanford, and Yale. And we had 3 experts from Harvard, Stanford, Yale, and they were saying exactly the opposite thing. Oh, you know, saying trust the experts to me makes no sense at all. Trusting the experts is a function of religion and totalitarianism. It is not a function of democracy. In democracy, we question everybody.
So anyway, it's just too bad he has such a terrible take on foreign policy, because that guy would freaking destroy the FDA and the CDC. So I think it's just it's obvious that this freaking News Nation town hall was suppressed. You know, you can listen to the whole thing if you really want to, but I think I picked out most of the good parts. But the stuff about 5G, that's something that's like Alex Jones level conspiracy shit. You know, like that's not stuff that you're supposed to talk about in people. He's like, yeah, like I fucking do a bunch of cases and people are proving that there's like leakage between like the blood-brain barrier from holding a phone up to their head all the time. Like, it's like, I have hundreds of these cases. And like the fact that he's really challenging what it means to be a conspiracy theorist, you know, because it'll be interesting if he finds a way to be able to kind of like fact check himself, to be like, yo, here's the documents, like here's all the evidence, like, you know. But I think he's doing a really good job with these clearly adversarial engagements. You know, this town hall was obviously adversarial. They were not on his side. They were not neutral. They were obviously like liberal oriented. But you know, I guess what I want to see with him in the future it's clear that he's never going to be allowed to be on establishment media. He's never going to be invited on CNN. He's never going to be invited on MSNBC. Maybe he'll get invited on maybe he'll get invited on Fox News, but even that I maybe not. Maybe he'll definitely be on like Glenn Greenwald again. See him on Kim Iverson. What it would be really helpful to his campaign, especially with like kind of exposing these messages, to be on like Tucker Carlson, okay? Because Tucker Carlson's getting more views on Twitter now than it was on Fox, and I'm sure if Tucker Carlson wanted to interview RFK and did a long form like fucking 45-minute, hour-long interview, I think that could be really impactful, and something that people wouldn't be able to take their eyes away from. So, you're talking about really, really, really big names would be the ones to kind of really get his influence and kind of change what it means to be like a conspiracy theorist, where he's able to back all these things up, or he's with a more with a journalist or with reporters who, like Joe Rogan, but like Joe Rogan's kind of dumb. Like he doesn't fact check in the same way. Like if he could go on like Joe Rogan, and as he's going through and like doing Joe Rogan, if he had this show, News Nation show, this News Nation town hall on Joe Rogan, and if you've ever seen Joe Rogan, he's got that fucking huge 75, 85-inch screen, whatever, in the front of his show, and he just has his engineer fact-checking all the court cases, all the fucking precedent, all the FDA shit, all the CDC shit, while they're having like a 3 or 4 hour long interview. Like that would like freaking blow people's minds. Okay? No, like Nick Riviera said, like Joe Rogan just lets people talk. And I think, as Max Blumenthal said, that's kind of like his charm, is that like he just like has people on whatever and they'll just like spew their bullshit for hours. But at the same time, it's a very long format, and Joe Rogan has a huge following. So if he was able to drop these red pills and be able to bring up like, oh yeah, pull up this court case, 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 and you just see like all of it on the Jumbotron, on his jumbo screen, I think that would be a little bit more influential than what he's doing right now. Like, props on this News Nation thing. I'm sure it was like a really small audience though. So Snow Himbo writes, what's kind of funny, and that's actually going to kind of lead me to my next topic in a second here, was that it'd be good for fact checking is using AI. And what's ironic is that we've actually seen stuff where it was actually a lawyer recently got caught by a judge using ChatGPT to use court cases as precedent while he was fighting a court case. And the judge called bullshit. And it turns out that ChatGPT completely fabricates court cases. Okay. So if it completely fabricates court cases, you can imagine it just makes shit up all the time. I was talking to my girlfriend at the airport last week, and I was just telling her like a similar story about how fucking ChatGPT just makes stuff up. And this guy who was like an MBA recruiter was talking to me. He's like, I'm not involved in tech at all. But like when I'm looking up stats or I'm trying to look up like anything and I'm trying to use ChatGPT beyond anything being like, what's a pick and roll? It's like completely wrong. It has no idea what it's talking about and will completely make stuff up. So even like the average layman is pretty familiar that like ChatGPT is pretty unreliable. So I would think, just again, I think the important things for RFK at this point, if he's just going for trying to get this message out, which, me, I don't vote, I don't fucking deal with that fucking electoralism bullshit. But at the end of the day, what I am about is letting more people see what RFK has to say in regards to the FDA, in regards to CDC, in regards to regulation, in regards to the military industrial complex. These are all things that everybody needs to hear, regardless of his fucking dog shit take on Israel. So if he wants to keep up with, finding bigger audiences where he can get that message out, that's more important than him fucking becoming president. We all know that if he became president tomorrow, nothing would fundamentally change because the levers of power are not within the executive branch. They're the people within the military industrial complex. They're the people within the the State Department. You know, they're the Beltway bandits. They're not the president. The president doesn't have much power, okay? So we know that his power, you know, his influence, his dynasty is better served by letting people hear as much of this red pilling as possible. So that's why I mentioned Joe Rogan. But you know, as some of you correctly pointed out, like Joe Rogan doesn't push back on anything. But you know, with 100 million person plus audience, you know, you can't. It's hard to find another audience that would be willing to have him on that would expose him to this level. Like even other right wingers, like you think Shapiro would have freaking RFK on? You think I think Peterson had him on. Who else? You know, like I don't watch right wing media, so I don't know, but like I think he would have better luck on right wing media red pilling people about this stuff than he would trying to find any like I don't think you're gonna see RFK on Katie Halper. You know, I think that if RFK was on Bree, there would be an adversarial thing. She would be pushing back against him. We already saw him on Breaking Points that it was an adversarial, confrontational thing between him and Crystal Ball. So it's a really, really interesting kind of place where he sits in the electoral race right now, because he vibes more when it comes to kind of scrutinizing and being skeptical of the federal government with the right wing. Okay. But he calls himself a Democrat for some reason, and really what that comes down to through what he's discussing and how he kind of like his rhetoric that he's espousing is just that he's a Zionist, you know, which obviously is extremely problematic. So I think it's interesting, like what else makes him a Democrat besides he feels like he's just like an old school Democrat. You know, he wants to do the Dementer thing and changes things from the inside. I think that's ridiculous, you know, but he is a Kennedy, so that's what he's gonna do. But I think like he would vibe with the conservative audience a lot more with this skepticism on the federal government and state power, you know. So I don't know why he's not trying to get his message out in that regard with the more right-wing contingent. Like I think if he knows that he's not really a serious candidate, that he should just be trying to get eyeballs on whatever and not really care that the liberals who are consumed by MSNBC and CNN are going to be pissed that he was on like freaking Crowder or something, you know. So I just hope his red pilling gets some more exposure. I hope his Israel stuff gets called out on more. I hope, like I've said multiple times, I hope he takes up Max Blumenthal's offer and goes on Gray Zone just so that they can have like an hour and a half discussion about freaking Palestine. And at the end of it, RFK Jr. is just like, you know what? I think you're right. Israel is fucking terrible. You know, so that's really what like what I'm waiting for. I'm, you know, like Glenn Greenwald did this thing a couple weeks ago where he addressed the question where he was like, wow, his Israel freaking response was absolute dog shit. And you know, one of the things that RFK said offhanded was he gave a response and then he said, but maybe you're right. And Glenn Greenwald kind of interpreted that as saying like, hey, you know, RFK might be open to learning new things and being open to discovering that his ideology is flawed and that he's just like a hardcore Democrat because he lives in Hollywood. He's exposed to that fucking liberal bullshit 24/7. That's just like, you know, he grew up as a Kennedy, like that's his thing. So he's never been confronted with that truth about Israel. So we hope that he eventually goes on Max Blumenthal, and that would be a freaking hit, because I don't see how RFK could be on an interview with Max Blumenthal talking strictly about Israel for like an hour or 2 hours and not come out and being like, oh my God, like you're completely right. I don't know why I was never told this stuff. Or he'd be like, I know exactly why I was never told this stuff. You know, so let's just hope on that. And on that note, I'm gonna shift gears a little bit. You know, again, like I don't want to put RFK on a pedestal, but for all the stuff that we can disagree on with his foreign policy, the fact that he's like, you know, putting into mainstream discourse, you know, these red pills about scrutinizing and being skeptical of our federal agencies is really important discussion to be had. Uh, Desert Man has said right here that Max would school him, and that's the point. That's totally the point. Is that Max would school him. We want Max to school him. Max wants to school him. You know, what we hope is that RFK on the other hand wants to be schooled and wants to be educated instead of wanting to be adversarial. I can see him for the first like 30 or 40 minutes being adversarial and calling bullshit on everything that Max would have to say. But if we stand to believe that RFK, as I do, I just think that he's speaking earnestly. I think he's speaking authentically. Would go on a long form interview with Max Blumenthal. I think by the end of it, he'd be like, "You bring up some really compelling points that I want to know more about." You know, because really, that's the big hang up with me. If RFK can talk about how the military industrial complex needs to be reined in, but doesn't totally recognize, you know, how Israel and the US, how their foreign policy relation works and benefits the military industrial complex. There's a little bit of a cognitive dissonance there that I hope that somebody like Max Blumenthal could help him see. You know, or you know, let's hope, because like Glenn Greenwald doesn't pull punches. The next time RFK is on Glenn Greenwald will probably ask him about Israel again and be like, "Hey, like let's push this a little deeper. Let's go a little deeper into this." You know, he's a professional enough where he's not going to just lay all the cards and go for the jugular when he wants to have RFK on his show for the next year and a half. But I would expect, you know, through multiple interviews with Glenn Greenwald, that he's going to kind of get on his case more and more about Israel and China. So it'll be interesting to see how that evolves. But you know, I don't think anybody really thinks that he's a serious Democrat like candidate. We just want him to like be awakened and awaken people's minds. So with that point, I kind of want to shift gears to something that's more, it's more like, I don't know, more opinion at this point, and less like kind of getting out of the news cycle for a second. Because there's this thing like, so AI has kind of entered the cultural zeitgeist and it's exposed to us every day, and we're kind of seeing how it's being used in these kind of frivolous ways to kind of normalize it in our everyday culture and kind of normalize what's the word I'm looking for, kind of devaluing human creative process and elevating AI at the same time. And I think that's really dangerous for a number of reasons. But let's first get into the little video that kind of made me decide that I wanted to go on a little bit of a tirade with this. So give me just a second here. Where are you? Yes, I agree that we need to avoid AI. I'll talk about that in a second here. So first off, I cropped this because I'm a shitty reposter, but it came from a TikTok and it came from the Museum of Modern Art. Okay, so the freaking curators at the Museum of Modern Art think that this represents quote unquote art. Okay, this was done using AI. Okay, and whether this was done using AI. Okay, so somebody had to enter, and whatever the prompt was gave this as an output. So let's watch this. And then I'll look at the comments briefly, and then I'll kind of give you my 2 cents on kind of the big picture here. Oh, is it really going to be like that? All right, let's do this then. Sorry, guys, this thing's a little screwed up right now. Oh, I hope I don't lose you. All right. So give me 1 second here. I know I recently got a second screen. I'm going to be messing around with the layout, and I'm going to do a lot more with like social media and stuff like that. I'm still trying to get my bearing straight with and also my computer. I have like a $500 computer that I got like a year ago, so it's kind of like chugging along when I start putting up a lot of multimedia. That's why I try and do most of my stuff with text, because once I start bringing in multimedia, it just likes to mess with me. So let's see. So we'll share this. What's going on here? All right. I might loop it because the buffering looks like crap, and I kind of want it to see that it is like a video. Man, it's just chugging along. My Wi-Fi is like, fuck this. Really? I know I got 500 meg. Damn you, Comcast. You really don't want to look at this little 720p video. Do I gotta like... I can't even change the bit rate? Come on, man. Really? All right, we're going to refresh it. Thanks for bearing with me, guys. Just this seemingly innocuous video just like made me realize people weren't talking about this enough, and that's kind of why I wanted to like play it at least. Man, it really doesn't want to play. That's so unfortunate. What a joke, Twitter. Can you please fix your platform? It really doesn't want to play. It's really like absolutely not under any circumstances. All right. Well, while that's attempting to play, I'm going to put the sound off. Let's do this. I'm going to try this one more time. I'm just going to let it play, and I'm going to do my little spiel. Man, people blowing up my DMs. But you can see, okay, so what we got here is we have a digital image. Like, I don't know if like any of you have ever been to like seen like Times Square, some of those crazy buildings in China and some of those huge, enormous cities where they got the high def displays that look like 3D. But that's all it is. It's a display generating a like something that looks like a three-dimensional image. Okay, so it's not actually like, it's not like it's creating like a paint splatter. It's a digital image. God, it's so unfortunate this isn't playing at all. That's really driving me crazy. It's like completely not playing at all. And now it really doesn't want to play anything. Should have taken this off of Twitter and just downloaded it. Bear with me, guys. Now my computer's not doing anything. Yay. Oh, okay. So you can kind of see it now, but doing it just fine when not sharing it. All right, here we go. Let's do this. Give me 1 second here, guys. All right, there we go. So this is what the Museum of Modern Art, okay, the MoMA, wants you to think of as art, okay? So you can see that there's a bunch of people there. There's been a number of exhibits. I only got wind of this kind of yesterday, so I didn't really have a chance to like dive deep into it. But there's a lot of takeaways to take away from with just seeing that the bourgeoisie have decided that they want this fake prompt okay, to compete with human expression, okay? That's really the problem here, is that we have things now where we have this image, we have these freaking fake images that are created out of AI, and they want us to be cool with that being competitive with uh human ingenuity, okay? And I think that's problematic. I think we need to be careful with that. So you can kind of see what's going on there. I wrote a little bit, so give me a little bit here while I pull this up. But we're kind of at the point now that we're seeing that AI has kind of entered the cultural zeitgeist. There's a couple things that we really need to think about now, and we need to start putting into perspective what's going on with AI, and that we need to rein it in before it's too late, and before I'm just going to turn it off. It's a little weird going on a little soliloquy here, but I guess I'm going to go for it. So the thing we need to be careful of is that now that AI is becoming kind of ascended to the point where even people who don't pay attention to AI are now familiar with it and are going into museums and seeing it and are associating it with something that was made by the hands of a human. It's time to really think about what our relationship as humans is to AI, because everything that we see that's happening with AI right now is going to be completely recognizable within 2 years or so. Completely unrecognizable. Okay. So what we're seeing right now is we're seeing an evolution of a technology that's never been done before. Not like cars. Okay. It's not like freaking airplanes. It's not like freaking electricity. Okay. The thing about AI and the technology and how it's evolved is that it has this kind of like transcendental nature to it. Okay. That's not something that's ever been experienced in our lives as humans who have created other products. Yes, we've kind of like created things that mimic humans in certain ways. Okay, we've created bots. We've created robots that answer to commands. We have Siri, we have Alexa, we have Google Assistant. We have these things that kind of mimic like they do human action, and they kind of mimic our behavior, but they don't like think the way that AI is. So there's a couple really big takeaways that we need to consider now that we actually have this service, ChatGPT. I'm kind of making an assumption that most of us here are familiar with ChatGPT and Midjourney, and the fact that there is these consumer products now that are being put out, and for the last like 6 months or so, there's been ChatGPT has been out, and Midjourney has been out. Midjourney is the art version, where basically they're like, hey guys, we want to see what consumers think of this AI technology. Please play with it. But what we as consumers are not really grasping, and this is like the kind of transcendental nature of AI that's really not clicking, and that's really dangerous in my opinion, is that when we're over here typing on ChatGPT, asking it stupid questions and relating to it and humanizing it, because we're able to have human interactions with this AI, okay? We're kind of transcending human emotion, human behavior, and human action in ways that we weren't able to do it with other technology that we have developed in the past. Okay. So it's beyond it just kind of giving us an output like 1 + 1 = 2. We're also now in a situation where, imagine we're in a world years from now where everybody's been alienated. We got the goggles on our head, and we're now in an environment where the way that we appreciate this digital art that we see, art, if you can call it that, is through a digital medium that we spend most of our time in, something like a metaverse that, Mark Zuckerberg has paid $12 billion into last year. Okay. I really think that like that's kind of their end goal. Okay. Yes, it's been an abject failure up until this point, but that doesn't mean they're not still trying. So when we start getting to the point where we're humanizing AI, that leads us kind of down to a slippery slope where it's going to start replacing humans in ways that we can't really quantify and in ways that are going to alienate us any further. So there's a couple points I want to make up. So for the first off, I think it seems to me from the comments that most people kind of feel the same way I do about how like AI art isn't really art. Like, yes, like I've seen the arguments where people say that there's like the artist is the guy who makes the prompt, the guy who wrote out all the code and went through like hundreds of different iterations to come up with that exact image that they wanted. Okay. Um, I would argue that if there's an intermediary like the AI that's actually doing the production of it, then it's no longer art at that point. It's now just an output of an AI creation. Yes, there was somebody who had to come up with like a clever prompt to get what they wanted and had to go through trial and error hundreds of times to do it, but that doesn't make them an artist. That makes them like guy who made prompts and came up with this digital asset that doesn't mean anything. It doesn't contribute anything to society. So, let's assume for a second that fine art as an institution, we're not living in a vacuum. We're living in a vacuum, and we know that art is actually an expression of human emotion, and it's not just a money laundering grift. Which obviously, as we've seen from NFTs, that this stuff with like the giant, like high definition, three-dimensional ish AI art is an evolution of that. And we're going to keep seeing evolutions of that. Okay. But by putting that in a museum, it's now an affront to human expression and human creativity. Thanks to Himbo a little bit for that, for your input on that a little bit. But basically, we're kind of getting to the position where instead of us appreciating something like art, which we can make the argument is bourgeoisie in and of itself, but there is some element of it where it was still based around human expression. And by assigning human expression to artificial intelligence, you're now transcending a human emotion, something that makes us innately human, onto something that was created at our hands. Okay, and that's really dangerous because what happens when you start transcending human behavior and human emotion and human all the stuff that makes us unique, when you start transcending that onto AI, what happens? People are going to start thinking that AI deserves rights. Okay. People are going to start thinking that AI should be able to do certain things on par with humans and be able to commoditize themselves and the things that I'm even against assigning kind of pronouns and stuff to it. But there's going to come a point where if we continue to humanize AI, there's going to come a point where AI is able to commoditize the things that it produces. And if it's only producing digital assets, then you're not creating anything. All you're doing is serving capital and you're just creating fake things that don't really exist anywhere, but beyond ones and zeros that some AI had created sometime. Okay. And going beyond that, if you really kind of want to put on that tinfoil hat for a second, if you look at the huge push to commoditize digital assets purely for the fact that they are AI or that they exist in this medium that's apart from material reality, it's actually kind of creating a situation where you have something that's called fictitious capital, where all it exists for is to make some people really rich and a lot of people holding the bag. You saw that with NFTs. The same thing is going to happen with these as people find more uses for creating digital assets using AI beyond just art. Okay, they start making products that people can use in the metaverse, say like Louis Vuitton or Balenciaga or fucking outfits that people can use in metaverse or something like that. Like that's going to happen, So when they're able to commoditize that stuff, you're so far divorced from you're now in a position where something that was created with ones and zeros, something that doesn't really have any material value in the world, is supposed to have some intrinsic value because it was created by an AI. Okay, that doesn't make any sense. Okay, that's not real. Okay, if it doesn't create anything, if it doesn't exist in this material world, there's an argument to be made that doesn't really have any value. Okay, so we need to be really careful when we see these things, these digital assets get ascended to this place where they can only be purchased as digital assets. Yeah, sure, you can like have this like giant jumbotron in your fucking home, and then you can see that it's just like a rich man's grift. But other than that, where else are you going to see these digital assets if not in a digital environment? And we saw these things like the Apple Vision Pro that came out a couple weeks ago. You see this with, to a small degree, stuff like the HTC Vive or the different Oculuses, stuff like that. But the Vision Pro is kind of like the big picture here, where they're trying to create an augmented reality because there's so much inequality in the world that they want to basically, for us, for a pittance, that pittance could be $3 fucking grand, or maybe a payment plan for the next 10 years. But they're trying to create an environment that we can put on our skulls that creates that is apart from our material world, so that they can sell us these garbage digital assets that were created by AI at a markup. So something that was created from nothing, okay, that was artificially generated, they put a price tag on it for something that you can only view in all of its, like, in the way that's supposed to, through a digital medium like metaverse, unless you happen to be wealthy enough where you like are part of the laundering scheme and you have it in your home. That's kind of like that's how I see the end game here. I see it as a means for the capitalists to recognize that we're running out of physical resources to turn into commodities on our planet that people still find value for, where they're now resorting to finding ways to commoditize digital assets on a massive scale. And so that's why you see things like NFTs, which, I used to be into NFTs like a year and a half ago. Like, I had a buddy reach out to me about NFTs and was like, this is gonna be a great thing, we should get in on this. Now I started reading about it and understanding it and seeing how it was just like rug pull after rug pull after rug pull. It like made me sick to my stomach. And the same thing is going to happen. And one of the points with AI that we need to be careful of, these people who think that they're artists because they know how to use these AI systems. What happens when OpenAI, who makes ChatGPT, or Midjourney decide that they have all the data points that they got from us? They decided that after billions upon billions upon billions of inputs from human users, that they don't need our input anymore, and they just take it away. Okay. All those plugins that have been made for ChatGPT, all those plugins that have been made for Midjourney, all that stuff is going to be completely gone. They'll get some GIMP version of these software, or they'll get nothing at all, because I don't really believe that these technologies are to be used to the benefit of humans. If they were, they would increase production without us expected to produce more production, like do more production. Okay, they're supposed to be saving us time, and they're not. There's a lot, like Graver's talked about this at length. I think fucking, who is it? Kropotkin talks about this. One of the tenets of anarcho-communism is that, yes, like, please, like, we should embrace technology, and the way that we're going to do that is we're going to figure out how to use technology so that we never have to work anymore. Okay, so the big contrast here is that, like me, I used to be so much in favor of technology and loved like the direction it was going. I loved how awesome it was going to be. I was really excited for it. And I wish I saved this comment, but I don't have it anymore. But basically what's happened is we now have to fear this technology and put up the guardrails because of who controls the technology. This technology is not open source as the way OpenAI has positioned it. You have companies like Palantir that actually created an AI for the battlefield. Okay, that's fucking Peter Thiel, multi-billionaire, has a fucking AI. Okay, so you see that this is happening, and we're not putting the brakes on it. And I see that very obviously that the bourgeoisie are trying to replace humans in favor of AI, so that they can commoditize something without having to have any labor behind it. Okay. And people are going to fall for it. People are going to fall for it because, I could envision a day where a cheap pair of Oculuses are being subsidized by the government and being sent to everybody, all 300 some odd million Americans at the home in their homes. And You're now like in your studio apartment using your freaking Oculus to be on the metaverse 16 hours a day. I genuinely see something like that happening someday. So there's a couple other points I want to put here. I think I kind of drove down some of the bigger ones, but some of the interesting things I also want us to think about in terms of where AI is headed and some of the things that I think we need to be concerned about, especially as it pertains. I want us to think about how we're humanizing AI. Okay, we're like AI is transcendental. When we interact with AI is learning from our interactions. It's literally adapting to our behavior to create more tailored results for us. There will be a time where that Alexa that's in somebody's living room is going to know you by name, know your everything about you, and be able to engage in a dialogue with you that is appropriate based on the interactions that have had on you. Like everybody's Alexa is going to be tailored differently. It's going to be tailored to their own AI. That's their own experience, their own way that they interact with with AI. One of the things I actually say as somebody who feels like we really need to pump the brakes on AI is that there's kind of two things that we need to do as people who are aware of the dangers of AI, even though it has so much potential and there's so many things to be excited about. There's so many things that are dangerous about that. I think we really need to put brakes on it for two major reasons. One is that we don't have any control as it stands right now over our likeness. Okay, so when you engage with an AI, you're not just doing like answer and response. Like I said, it's learning your essence. Okay, it's learning who you are. It's learning who Chris is. Learning who Snowhammer is. It's whoever goes on ChatGPT is learning how people interact with each other and interact with artificial intelligence. Okay, so we need to establish a point where we stop using this technology into some safeguards in place that enshrine uh the understanding that humans are superior to AI, okay, and that our likeness is our own, and that we have control over our likeness, and that technologies that or companies that have AI, okay, like whether it be fucking Amazon, Google, any of them, they cannot use our likeness to against us, basically. Okay, they can't use our likeness to be able to market to us. They can't use our likeness to be able to engage with us. They can't use our likeness to sharpen its AI's potential. Okay, I really think that that needs to be like a hard line. That there's been so many decades where we've had no control over our intellectual property, and not to say that I'm like a big fan of intellectual property anyway, but I think that if we don't at least have control over what makes us unique, there's going to be a point where they're going to be perfectly capable of having AI that's able to mimic Chris, that's able to mimic everybody in the chat, completely to the point where we have this kind of pseudo singularity and people don't really understand the difference. Can't tell the difference between when they're interacting with an AI and they're interacting with another human being. And that's really scary, especially if we don't have rights that enshrine us as superior to AI and rights that ensure that AI is always going to be a tool for us and never going to be in a point where it can subsume us. Okay, because I definitely see something like that coming. Now, one of the things that I've always kind of thought about, and seeing this image of the MoMA exhibit, pretending to kind of show off art, it kind of gives credence to this idea that I've always had in my head. Okay, so let's imagine for a second, we all use Amazon every single day. We don't, because we're good people and we understand that Amazon is a toxic industry. Toxic, it might as well be industry. Toxic corporation. But bear with me for a minute that Amazon exists and we all use it, and it's achieved its goal of being in everybody's household and fulfilling all their needs and being their one-stop shop and subsuming the USPS, et cetera, et cetera. Okay. Before we get to that point, I truly believe there's going to be, you're going to start seeing these stories where people are going to be like, hey, like I didn't order this from Amazon. but I subscribed to Prime and it just sent me like my favorite toilet paper and soap. It just sent it to me. Didn't ask for it. It just sent it to me. Like, I need toilet paper and soap, but it just sent it to me. Like, I didn't ask for it. Like, I'm not really complaining, but it kind of feels weird. It kind of feels like an invasion of privacy. But at the same time, like, it fucking nailed it. Like, I need my toilet paper. I need my soap. So good job, Amazon. You know, that's going to happen. That's going to happen. Okay. Take it a step further. There's going to be a point where Amazon is not just sending you toilet paper and soap, and now it's sending you your favorite foods. Now it's sending you gifts for your friends. Now it's sending you, you know, maybe like hobby supplies for something that you do, because you got the Alexa in the other room that's been listening to you for years. Okay. So it eventually starts sending you stuff again without asking, but you're like, wow, I actually really wanted this Lego set. I was talking to my friend about it the other day. Oh wow, this video game just came out. It's already in my library and downloaded. Oh, that's convenient. Thanks, Amazon. So we're going to end up in this point where people have become so comfortable with AI actually seeing that it's for our convenience. And remember, like Whitney Webb, thank you, Whitney Webb, because you're absolutely right about this. When we start seeing that it's convenient for us and we start getting all these things done to us, like Amazon, you know, doing our shopping for us and without us even having to alert it, it'll get to the point where Amazon, instead of just predicting our buying habits, is now basically generating our buying habits. Okay. So once they understand at the point that they're able to control our buying habits and they're not getting pushback and they're not getting rated down because they're like doing our shopping for us and they're doing our day to day without us being alerted and are just keeping us afloat, then we're at the next stage where everybody just accepts it. And we don't I kind of lost my train of thought at that point, but it's at that point where, you know, Amazon is going beyond, you know, the reason of needing to have advertising, and it's just sending you products that you know you want, and that's going to be the end of it. Okay? This is why I think Amazon has its own brand of products, okay? Is because to put other third parties out of business. You know, we've seen that. But also because once they got enough data and they use their AI to understand all of our buying habits and they get the go ahead to start mailing us toilet paper and mailing us soap, they're going to start generating our buying habits and doing the buying for us. And then, you know, we can have a whole discussion about free will. I think free will kind of goes out the window. And that's why I really tell people that, like, Wall-E really is a cautionary tale. When you picture the fat asses who are 300 pounds with the digital display in front of them on the cruise ship, that's what they're going for. Okay. That's what they're going for. Okay. I really, 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 truly believe that they're going to try and deprive us of our freedom of choice by pretending that it's more convenient for us to have everything just kind of sent to us. Okay. That's going to happen. Let me see what else. I definitely, like, I'm glad I mentioned that point. Let's see. Okay, so there's also something I also wanted to mention. So this is kind of funny, and I do have a video. I do have not a video, but I do have an update, a Twitter for this, because it is kind of interesting. It kind of goes to my point. Maybe I don't have it. I thought I had it. Maybe I don't have it anymore. Okay. Well, I guess I don't. But anyway, there's this point where there was this thread where some techno bros were complaining that the Mid-Journey update wasn't getting made it so that their prompts weren't working anymore and they weren't getting the desired result anymore. Okay. So as I've said, you know, this AI technology is increasing at a speed that we can't even fucking comprehend, and that everything that we see today is going to be unrecognizable within 2 years or so. Okay. I'm like 100% certain on this. Okay. But the techno bros, they see the recent version of, you know, Mid-Journey or ChatGPT comes out, and they're all butthurt that their prompts aren't working anymore. Okay. So you're starting to see, I think, or I hope to kind of generate as people kind of see my side of things, that there's going to start to see a schism between the techno bros who are like, we need to get behind AI. Look at all the amazing things that it can do. Look at all the things that we're able to produce with it. Look at, I'm able to do the work of 10 people with one person. You know, you're going to have those techno bros, okay, who don't have a clue that they're kind of like helping fulfill their own destiny of being a freaking slave to the system. And then you have us, which are pushing back against it and refusing to engage with it because we understand that we're just data points. Okay, so I see that happening. And with that being said, the techno bros, okay, these people, we'll call them the AI advocates, I guess. Okay, like I don't know if you guys use Twitter like to the same degree that I do, but I like the way the algorithm kind of turned out since Elon Musk got his own, since he bought it. And I appreciate you, Anthony. Thank you for that. Since Elon bought it, if you click on something, even if you disagree with the content, it'll start spewing out more and more and more and more and more of that content. Okay, regardless, like you could be frustrated about it, but it'll keep spewing content. So one of the things is that like ChatGPT came out after Elon Musk bought Twitter, and I was like starting to get interested in it. So I started following, like looking at Twitter threads, and these blue checks would start posting 10 great things, 10 plugins you need to have for fucking ChatGPT, 10 fucking, tools you can use ChatGPT for, how to fucking update your resume with ChatGPT, like millions and millions and millions of different things just all day long about people trying to commoditize this experiment that we're going through right now. We're basically seeing the dawn of AI. Okay, we really are. We're witnessing something quite of dramatic right now, and people are just kind of being frivolous about it. But I actually wrote about this, so with that in mind, okay, we got these techno bros who are creating this stuff. I want us to also consider that they don't recognize that they're part of the experiment, okay, and that's a big issue. Okay, so these techno bros who understand the technology ostensibly better than we do, even though I kind of know, like, I know how to use it. I know you use Midjourney to come up with a prompt. I know how to fucking use ChatGPT to get it to sort of say what I want it to say, even though we've talked about for months about how ChatGPT is a joke, an establishment, and you have to go through all these hoops to get to say anything close to the truth. But the people who are really enrolled in AI right now, the advocates, they haven't put it together that they're part of the experiment. Okay, they don't see that after seeing the hundreds of rug pulls that they saw that NFT that with NFTs, and for people who don't know, one of the big things that happened with NFTs, which became like put a bad taste in everybody's mouth, was that there was these thing called rug pulls, where people would invest in these NFT collections, thinking that they were going to get a piece of the puzzle, piece of the pie, and then these organizations that created these NFT companies would just take all the money and run and start another NFT company or whatever. But they'd make millions upon millions and millions of dollars. And because crypto is deregulated, they would just rug pull. They would just take the money and run. Okay, this happened tons and tons and tons of times. Countless times. I literally, not hyperbole. Look up rug pull on Twitter. Look up rug pull on Google. Look, and you'll find just tons of examples of NFTs just completely used to just manipulate and take advantage of people. So that being said, I think the same thing is going to happen with AI, with ChatGPT, Midjourney, etc. As I said earlier, there's eventually going to come a point where the creators of OpenAI, which includes Elon Musk, okay, he's one of the funders of OpenAI, okay, they're eventually going to rug pull us and be like, okay, we got all the information we need. We don't need your help anymore. And all these people who create these plugins, all these people who created all this cool stuff for what we think of AI as of today, okay, are going to be like, what the fuck did I do all this work for? Okay, they maybe it'll click, but most of them are so involved with participating in this capitalist system that we have that they're going to make excuses for this happening. So there's okay, and then I already touched upon this, but they also don't understand that what's also an irony about this is that the techno bros and the people who are familiar with how to use this technology, okay, the people who are quote unquote the experts at using this technology, are feeding AI, artificial intelligence, input to analyze. Okay, so you can assume that there's people who have probably above average intelligence. Like, yes, they have like a shit take when it comes to understanding how artificial intelligence will be used against us, but they're entrenched enough in the industry that they know how these things work, and they are the kind of like the expert opinion on this. The artificial intelligence is getting input from very valuable resources. Okay, so people don't also understand, and this is why I also go back to saying that we need to have protections over our own intellect, because AI is basically hijacking our input and internalizing it as its own. Okay, so imagine one day we are having to log in to use, whether it be Bing or Google or whatever. They all have their own, Google has this version of Bard, their own. You're going to have to log in, and eventually the AI is going to be tailored to everybody. Okay. And you can thank the techno bros who use this shit every day, for helping augment AI to get to the position where it's able to have tailored experiences for everybody. Okay. That it knows you better than you. Okay. That Amazon is sending you product before you know that you need the product, because it knows your shopping habits better than you do. Like, we're getting to that point. And nobody's paying attention. Okay. And I want to give Snow Himbo credit because he said this earlier, but part of AI art, and I'm always going to put in art and put it in expression, put it in quotes, because it's not art, it's just an output. Okay? It's capitalists appropriating creative expression. Okay? So again, this kind of goes back to the theme earlier where I was saying that we're getting to the point where the capitalists are running out of shit to commoditize. They're running out, like, they either just lack creativity, or they understand that the margins are too small at this point, that they're resorting to digital assets. That's why there's a huge push for the metaverse. Okay, that's why you see with the cultural hegemony that they're trying to put AI art into the fucking MoMA, because they want us to be in a position as consumers where we see an intrinsic value with fake property. Okay, things that are not real. Okay, they want us as consumers to be appreciative of that stuff. Okay, so that's why we need to really, really, really push back on it. And that's kind of like my last point, is that by something like the MoMA, the Museum of Modern Art, like showcasing artificial intelligence, we have to recognize that they are trying to assign an intrinsic value to ones and zeros, something that has no business having any value whatsoever. Yes, there was an artist who did some inputs to try and create that design. Okay, but it was created at the hands of artificial intelligence, and so I'm going to push really strongly back on that. Okay, it's really important to understand that there is no intrinsic value with digital assets. Yes, we play video games. Yes, we like buy these consoles, but we're still attached to material reality. Like, we're still engaging with other humans. Like, when we play a multiplayer game, when we play Call of Duty, okay, yes, that video game exists as a digital asset. Yes, we had to pay for it to be able to play it. Yes, there's an argument to be made that maybe after the freaking, billionth copy, we shouldn't have to keep paying for it because they've already made their profits 10 times over. But we are still interacting with that digital asset within the material world. Okay, so there's an argument made when you're playing Call of Duty as a multiplayer. Okay, yes, you're still interacting with a human somewhere else in the country, somewhere else in the world, somewhere else. There's still some sort of tangible material connection to you and that video game. Okay, they want to take that away from us. That's what the metaverse is about. They want to take it away from us. Okay, when you don't have to buy a fucking PlayStation 5 anymore, and instead they make you buy a digital PlayStation 5 so you can play it on your fucking Apple Vision Pro, so you can play your fake game of PS5 on your fake Apple Vision, then the world has completely imploded upon itself. Okay, that's the kind of shit that they're trying to do. Okay, something that has no intrinsic value, that was not produced in the real world. They're trying to assign a value to it and trying to make us as consumers be eager to purchase it. We need to be careful of that. Okay, it's not there for us to oogle and not there for us to idolize. It's there for us to purchase. So, yeah, you can tell I'm like, it just like kind of popped into my head after seeing this image yesterday, and I just got really pissed off about it. Okay, so this kind of touches upon the last thing I want to say about kind of going into how I feel that we need to recognize as humans, okay, as people, as solidarity, seriously, as people, okay, we need to recognize that there is a separation between us and artificial intelligence, okay? We need to recognize that, and we need to push back against that. So that being said, to give you an example of how artificial intelligence is transcendental, I want you guys to kind of get into my head for a second, because I've been thinking about this a lot, and I do think that this is kind of where this technology is heading, okay? So after billions upon billions upon billions of inputs from us, okay? Or, think about this for a second. What's to stop Jeff Bezos from having his own version of Alexa in his own house, okay? That's just listening to him talk all day, okay? Maybe he has his own version that's just tailored to him, okay? So it's just picking up his inputs and analyzing his fucking consciousness. That's really what it's doing, okay? And as I said before, there's no breaks, there's no safeguards enshrining humans as above artificial intelligence, okay? There's nothing enshrined protecting us as humans from having to compete with the machines, okay? So what's going to stop Bezos at one point where he's able to effectively argue, because billionaires have freaking the best lawyers that money can buy. They're going to effectively argue this little fucking Siri. It's not called Siri. It's called Jeffy. Okay. It's not called Siri. It's called Jeffy. And I'm going to make Jeffy CEO. Okay. Jeffy is in charge of my business now. Jeffy has all of Jeff Bezos' consciousness into it, built upon from the last 15, 20 years. Kept it in my house. I've kept it in my phone. Nobody else has access to it. My consciousness is in this little device. Okay. You can call it Siri if you want, but it's basically Jeffy. And what's going to happen to us when they say, okay, we've established, there's been precedent where we can now say that a AI is capable of managing Amazon. Okay. So there's an argument to be made that, or I would say that they would make that argument. Jeff Bezos would make that argument when he's 80, 90 years old, whatever, it doesn't matter. He can be like, when I die, it doesn't matter, because the Jeffy module I made will be able to handle everything the way I would have handled it. Okay. They will successfully argue that point. Okay. Because we're not putting the brakes on. It's going to come to that point where these corporations are owned by AI and managed by AI. Okay. I know that sounds fucking crazy. I know that sounds fucking insane, but that's the direction we're headed to. Okay. Fucking Palantir, which is owned by Peter Thiel, came out with its own version of War AI, 3-4 weeks ago? Okay. So these guys are actively working towards this stuff. Okay. Actively working towards this stuff. I think it's foolish to assume that they're only trying to make AI as it relates to the products they sell. I am very, very serious when I think that they're actively working to make AIs in their own image at the same time. Okay. Do you want to pray? Like, do you want to pray to a false idol? Like, I don't. Like, I think that, we're getting to the point where these are the kind of things, like, I used to feel like I was putting on a huge tinfoil hat saying this sort of stuff, but I see this as absolutely something that's going to happen. And the fact that we're not protecting ourselves from it right now and not putting the brakes on it, I'm all for humans being able to explode this stuff and, explore it to the masses. Like I said, Kropotkin said in Conquest of Bread that the purpose of technology was to liberate workers. Okay. Like, I understand that if we did not live under capitalism, the first thing we would do is use artificial intelligence and use existing technology and use industrialization to liberate us so we have more free time. I understand that in a perfect society, that's what we would want out of this. We wouldn't be relying on frivolous things like the MoMA putting digital art in art exhibits, trying to get us to be excited about purchasing stuff that has no value. Okay. So I guess is there anything else to go off of with that? I kind of oh yeah. Okay. So there's a couple of things I want to it's the video. It's not gonna play, so I guess I'm not gonna do it. But the final point I want to drive home, okay, just to kind of get on the side, it's a little bit of a side note, but it's a thing that I've been thinking about a lot recently in terms of artificial intelligence that I think we need to change if we want to change the way of how we relate to it, we need to stop assigning things like pronouns to it. We need to stop assigning animalistic things to it. So let me show you a perfect example, okay? So you guys might remember, I mean, I know you guys know the quote unquote spot thing, okay? There's a video with General Dynamics with the robots dancing around, stuff like that, but my computer, excuse me, is not really keeping up, so I'm going to skip over it. But what I wanted to show you was that I really think that one of the things that we need to be mindful of is getting out of the habit of assigning like biological characteristics to these objects, okay? So this might sound trite or not trite. This might sound petty, but I think calling something like this a dog is problematic, okay? Because we relate to dogs. The relationship that humans have to dogs goes back, thousands of years, okay? Dogs have always been a companion to us, okay? Dogs have always been like, we've always had a really kind of not intimate, but a very close relationship with dogs that's beyond it just being kind of like a master slave thing where there was a companion, okay? And I think it's really, really, really dangerous and really kind of, again, kind of normalizes this sort of shit, okay? You don't think it's a problem as much when it's not saying, it could be saying instead of they're putting guns on robot dogs now, they could say they're putting guns on autonomous government surveillance now. Feels a lot different that way. But when you call it a dog, there's an instinct kind of companionship nature to it, okay? So I know that could sound petty to some people, but I think it's important that we need to get away from assigning pronouns, human characteristics, animalistic characteristics, biological characteristics to artificial intelligence, okay? That's going to help us kind of safeguard ourselves and make sure that we're able to put a degree of distance between us and artificial intelligence because the government is not going to help us, okay? And the cultural hegemony, okay, the ruling class, they're putting this shit in museums because they want us to be cool with it. They want us to buy shit, okay? They want us to recognize this stuff as stuff that can compete with humans, okay? They want us to be consumers and buy this shit, okay? So the only way we can fight back, because the government will not do it for us, is if we refuse to acknowledge that artificial intelligence has any place for us other than being a tool that we use, okay, and is subsumed to us, okay, is below us, okay? And we know that our likeness, our individuality is protected from being co-opted by artificial intelligence. Okay. So yeah, it's a really hard line to set. And as somebody who's used to be quite optimistic of it, used to be really freaking a huge fan of artificial intelligence, it kind of is like with a heavy heart to say that we need to get away from this stuff. But I strongly believe that we need to freaking be advocating that this stuff is dangerous and we need to stop using it in lieu of the government doing anything to protect us. Because if we're not being protected and we're not protecting ourselves, it's going to be used to control us and we're going to be subsumed to it. Be mindful. It is what we see today. It's going to be unrecognizable from what we see in the next couple of years. People are not ready for the evolution of artificial intelligence. So with that point, I think I'm going to wrap up there. I really appreciate you guys kind of listening to my kind of spiel on that. Went a little bit longer than I thought I did. And if that's kind of cool stuff with you, like I like kind of doing these deep dives. I know I kind of go into kind of like a doomer kind of point of view on this stuff, but I think we need to have a more materialist understanding of these technologies. And if we kind of keep on track of just paying attention to the news cycle it's easy to kind of get lost in this big picture stuff where we realize where if we're just focusing on the latest and greatest of artificial intelligence and what it can do, we're not paying attention to how all this different stimuli is impacting us as humans. Okay. And I think the transcendental nature of artificial intelligence is going to be really dangerous to us and is impacting us in ways that we are not prepared for, that have not been discovered, that have not been studied, and that there is zero corollary. There is no corollary to artificial intelligence. There isn't. Okay. So with that said, I hope maybe a couple of you will be like, hey, I'm not going to use ChatGPT anymore because of what Chris said. And freaking awesome. You're doing the world a solid if that's the way you feel. Okay. But I'm going to start studying this stuff up a little bit more because I think that, like I said, with cultural hegemony, it is kind of getting pushed into the mainstream. Like I said, go onto YouTube and Google General Dynamics robots, and you're going to see the dancing robots. Okay. Like the dancing robots is just us humanizing the robots so that when they put guns in their hands, when they put guns into their appendages, we are not threatened by them because we've already established, oh, I saw that thing doing backflips and dancing on YouTube. Okay. So it's just another thing that we need to be mindful of, that they're going to be showing us kind of the convenience factor and the fun factor of this stuff. And they're not showing us how the dangers of it. And that's on purpose. So again, thank you so much for joining me tonight, guys. You're going to catch me on Politically Homeless. There's some on Monday with Greg. I know there's some more stuff to catch up on. What was the topic? Some more, I think it's some more surveillance stuff, but I will be talking more about this stuff for sure. And if you guys like this stuff, I'll go into this more deep stuff because I think we need to stay on top of, the big picture stuff before we get caught up in the 24-hour news cycle. And all of a sudden this stuff is completely impacting us and nobody was talking about it. So thanks again, guys. Please, once again, don't forget to like, subscribe, share. It really, 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 really helps to hit that like, to hit that subscribe. I am trying to get the message out. I will be chopping this stuff up to put out some videos with different segments at a later date. And again, thank you so much. I do this for you guys. I really appreciate it. I'm glad that you guys, getting something out of this. And I'll see you guys on Monday with Politically Homeless at the same time. And that every week, Bread and Circuses, same time, 9 p.m. Eastern on Thursdays. Take care, everybody.